Hello there and welcome to today's video, which is another Autistic Ramblings video, and this time with my friend Autistic Jenny. And you've probably noticed that I've done a few collabs recently, and it's really because I needed to get a temporary Zoom license for my Q&A with Julie and Rachel recently, and I thought at the same time it'd be a great opportunity to speak with some of my autistic friends here on YouTube. You will notice, however, that this video is quite different in style because Jenny has some ongoing issues with chronic pain, so she finds it difficult to sit in one place for any length of time. So obviously a video chat would be quite difficult. And also, like many autistic people, Jenny prefers to have a little bit of processing time as well. So we've essentially filmed our pieces separately for this video, so I'll be kind of responding to what Jenny's saying. So yeah, it's just a little bit different in style. So with no further ado, here are our Autistic Ramblings.
Hi, I'm really excited to be on your channel, Lizzie, and I've been a fan of yours for a long time. I found your channel when it had I want to say 300 subscribers, and I remember thinking to myself, boy, she's going to do really well, and look at you now. So thank you for having me on your channel. I'm really flattered.
Well, I'm very flattered, and I'm a really big fan of Jenny's channel too, and I remember actually on my very first video on Creative Autistic, Jenny left such a lovely comments, and essentially it was like a big welcome to the community. And I think Claire from Woodshed Theory left a little comment as well, which was so lovely. So in terms of YouTube, Jenny and I go back quite a long way really, so I was just so happy that she agreed to take part in today's video. So my first question to Jenny is, how did you come to realise you're autistic?
All right, strangely enough, when my daughter was a teenager, I was trying to pinpoint what might be going on with her behavior-wise. And for some reason, I came across autism, probably through YouTube and watching YouTube videos. So that really became my special interest. I went and gathered all the records I had of my daughter, health records, everything she had drawn as a kid. I mean, I had all that in packets. I was organizing it together. And through that process of trying to determine if my daughter was autistic, I really saw myself. And it was from watching early videos from Yosemite Sam and Mom on the Spectrum and Olivia Hops and Orion Kelly. And some of these early videos that I saw a relation there to myself. And it just kind of opened a whole new perspective of maybe I should be looking at that for myself.
I think this is such a common scenario, isn't it? And certainly I've seen very similar comments to this left on my channel from parents who have finally come to realise that they're autistic through getting their children assessed, because they start recognising their own traits, etc. So it's just so interesting. And I'm not a parent myself. Essentially, I found out I was autistic through perimenopause, but certainly Jenny isn't on her own in regard to this situation.
I did send my daughter for a evaluation to see if she was autistic. She wasn't determined to be autistic, but that's not surprising, is it? With girls on the spectrum, we come across differently with autism because can tend to be high masking. And I really believe this is what my daughter was doing in the interviews, that it just wouldn't show up. But I want to say that now at 32, my daughter is open to getting an autism assessment because she has seen how she struggled, and being a single mom has really brought that to light. So we'll see what happens from there. But I was the one that got the diagnosis first in my family. And then my two grandsons have also been diagnosed as autistic.
What was the diagnosis and assessment process like for you?
It took 2 times of assessments to get a diagnosis. So the first time I went to a lady psychiatrist, and she did all the testing on me. And then she comes back and diagnosed me with social communication disorder. But here's the thing. She really didn't talk to me a lot. She didn't get that I had fixations on things, and that I had obsessive hobbies, and that I had excessive routines. She didn't dig into that kind of stuff. She didn't ask me the questions. But the bigger problem was I was masking when I went in there. She noted how during one of my tests, I was asking the person that was testing me how they were doing. So because I did that, she thought I couldn't be autistic. When she was asking me about emotions and identifying emotions in other people, I really struggled, and I couldn't identify other people's emotions. And it really surprised me and caught me off guard how I didn't have the answers. And when she found out I had a friend that had been over to my house, she felt like I had friends. I couldn't be autistic. Even though I explained to her that this friend coming over and staying for 2 hours exhausted me, and I never invited that friend over again because I couldn't control how long she would stay. She didn't grasp onto the problem I had with friendships, and I've had problems with friendships my entire life.
Honestly, I find this so relatable because I've been in this exact situation a fair few times in my life where I've invited a friend over to where I live, which seemed like a good idea at the time, when I've invited them. But of course, being in the situation, I've soon realised that it's so difficult because you cannot control the situation, and it's really difficult. And of course, it's near impossible to get out of this situation because how do you say to somebody, look, I've had enough now, could you go home? Because it's not considered socially acceptable. So it yeah, becomes really, really stressful. And to think that the assessor in Jenny's case here had no understanding of this. As far as they're concerned, if you have a friend, you can't be autistic, seems just utterly ludicrous to me.
So I really think the problem with assessments is, at least the one I had and where I live, is you don't go in there and have a couple, 2 or 3 sessions before the assessment. You have like one session, and which is not enough time for them to really get to know you and find out if you're masking in the assessment. She didn't really know me after one session, and she didn't correctly diagnose me. And I went away from that assessment feeling so disappointed because I felt like something was just wrong with me and how I was just different from other people my whole life. And she didn't see that, and she didn't catch that. And so it really just made me depressed. So I just went on about my life for a few years and kind of pushed it aside. But then when I was having problems at my job, it really brought it to light again for me. How my behavior was so different from my coworkers, and I could just cry and melt down at the drop of a hat when I had overwhelming circumstances, and melt down in front of people, and they didn't understand why I was so dramatic, you know?
Yes, I do know. This sounds so much like myself as well. And, the amount of times that I've burst into tears in the workplace because I've not known what else to do because I felt so desperate in the moments. And looking back, I just didn't have the language to be able to tell people this is how I'm feeling because I didn't know I was autistic. And because I didn't know I was autistic, I honestly thought I was being dramatic because I didn't have any other way of explaining it. Everybody else seemed to get on okay at work, so why couldn't I? What was wrong with me? It felt like I was being overly dramatic, and I look back now in sadness because I was being so hard on myself in these moments.
And I didn't connect with any of my coworkers. I never really had friends at my jobs, not really, not close friends. So when I left that job because my boss was picking on me and taking me into panic attacks and things like that, I couldn't stay at that job. After 8 years, that new boss that come around finally ran me off. So I couldn't handle it emotionally. So I went and got another job doing the same thing in activities, working with seniors, another facility, but still feeling out of place. And here I was in my 40s, not understanding why all these cliques of people are happening and I just can't seem to connect with anybody or understand their ways of communicating with each other or why they want to communicate a certain way. So I went to seek a second diagnosis in 2021. I went to see a different psychiatrist. I went in there and I was not masking. I dropped the mask. I went in there and I was myself. I had a very flat effect, very monotone speaking, and was not trying to impress her. I was there for me. So some of the assessment tools that she used on me were the clinical interview and observations, some of my submitted records from when I had been tested before. I did not have to redo the IQ test, thank goodness. And she did the ADOS, which is an Autism Diagnostic Observation Schedule. She did the house, tree, and person test on me. And I had to draw these things she told me to draw. And she didn't give me much direction on that. So my drawings were really flat and really different. I guess you could see from my drawings. So she told me to draw a house, a person, and a tree. And so I just drew those items with nothing else in the picture. Why? Because that's what she told me to draw, right? As an autistic person, I wasn't told to draw anything else, so I didn't.
I'll be honest here in that I'm finding this test a bit weird, and I've not come across this test before, and it's really nice that Jenny's been able to give examples of what she's drawn here, but I don't know, I'm finding it hard to believe almost that very many people would respond to this in a different way. And I am talking about holistic and neurotypical people here. Surely, if somebody is asked to draw a house, they're gonna draw a house. I don't imagine there'd be very many examples of people adding further details into it, but I don't know, it's something that I'm gonna have to look into.
So, and I noticed when I drew my person, she noticed that I drew like this child or this, we'd say, preteen of a girl, like, which is flat features. And she noticed that. And they look for those things when they are assessing you. And so when I was drawing that, it was very flat pictures. It was no it was no extra put in there. So,
Firstly, I love Jenny's drawing here, but I have to say I am not sure what the assessor is looking for here, because I would think if you were to ask the average person to draw a person, they're going to come up with something similar, because I would imagine that somebody would draw in the main like a kind of stick figure with not a huge amount of detail. And just another thing while I think about it, because this test has really bothered me for some reason, but there are very many autistic illustrators and artists out there who by their very nature will of course incorporate far more detail into their work. So I'm not wholly convinced by how reliable this test is, but you know, again, I'm going to have to do far more research into it.
another test she had me do was the one where you have to tell a story. She opens a book and you follow through the pages and you're supposed to describe what's happening. She didn't really give me any context and I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. She just opened the book and there's this frog on the page And I'm just telling her what it is. I said, it's a frog on a lily pad. And she turns the page. And I said, it's jumping to that lily pad. It was the most boring story you could ever hear. But she didn't ask me to make it exciting. So I didn't. I just did what I would do and just tell what's happening on the pictures. So that was probably pretty telltale.
Now this is really interesting to me because I've heard about this book before and I haven't seen it, so it's really interesting to hear Jenny's perspective on it. But I imagine I would have come up with a very similar response to Jenny because storytelling is something that I have struggled with my entire life. And as an artist, I've worked with clay in recent years, but before then I used to do kind of cartooning, etc. And I have always been super envious of comic artists and graphic novelists who have been able to come up with amazing stories through their art because it's just not a skill that I have. And knowing I'm autistic now explains so much because I've always been super frustrated about this. And in terms of any storytelling that I've done through my life, it's always been stories that I've experienced. And through these experiences, I've been able to add in detail and nuance through memory recall. But in terms of imaginative storytelling, I'm really not good at it. And I think it also explains why I struggle with a lot of fictional storytelling and, in particular, like fantasy movies. I really struggle with the vast majority of them because I'm just not able to immerse myself in these universes because I don't know, it's almost like I need more reality within the stories somehow. It's really hard to explain, but certainly this book that Jenny's shown today is yeah, really interesting to me.
So I won't go into detail. The final outcome was I was diagnosed with autism. She did note that my speech during the assessment lacked intonation, my facial expressions appeared limited, and I showed difficulty with perspective taking when asked to describe my personal connections with other people. The funny part for me was her noting that I barely asked the examiner about herself, which is laughable because you're not there for the examiner, you're there for yourself. So she noted that I did not interact with her in that way.
This is fascinating because Neil at Autistic Not Alien said a very similar thing about his autism reports in our collab a few weeks ago, in that it was noted that he didn't ask his assessor any questions about themselves, which seems utterly absurd to me. You're there to be assessed, not to share pleasantries with the assessor. And I'd say the same thing about going to a counselling or therapy session. I've never asked any of these kinds of questions because it just didn't seem appropriate to me, and I certainly didn't ask any questions of my assessor for my autism assessment. So I don't know. It just seems like an odd thing to do to me.
She made a final note and she said that, therefore, Jennifer's results are consistent with the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, and she put in parentheses Asperger's syndrome. So, it was a relief for me to get the diagnosis because I had answers and I was excited to go and tell my family. I was very selective in the beginning. I just told immediate family, and then it just kind of has branched out over the years from that. I just want to say on some of these tests that they give autistic adults, and especially women, I hope that they will change them in the future to be more accurate. Like, reading a story about a frog and telling the story just doesn't seem like something an adult should be doing, really. Drawing a house, tree, and a person. But anyway, that's the process to get where I needed to be to get the diagnosis. So I did what I had to do.
I'm really glad that Jenny finally got her autism diagnosis, and it's just really interesting to hear how the assessment process was like for her, because they're all so different, aren't they? And it's no surprise to me that Jenny feels similarly about some of the tests as I do, that, you know, she was asked to do during her assessments. Particularly the drawing test seems really quite odd to me. Maybe there's something there in the storytelling one, but why can't we ask somebody how they think they are in regard to storytelling? Because I know I'm terrible at it unless I'm using memory recall. So I don't know, I think it needs a bit of a shake up, really. How has knowing you're autistic changed your life?
It's meant everything. It's my whole new identity. You know, you can't have an autism channel and not feel like you totally take on that identity. It's it's given me a place in this world. It's given me a community. It's given me more perspective on who I am. It's meant everything to me. It has reduced my depression because I have a lot more mercy for myself and know that I'm just neurologically different and wired differently, and it's not wrong. It's just how I am. And I'm okay with that. And I can love myself still and be happy with who I am as a person. And my family can understand me better. And my husband, my kids, and my grandkids, who even I've talked a little bit about my diagnosis too. But as they're getting older, I've had more conversations with them about it. It makes a huge difference for me.
It really does make all the difference. And every now and again, I'll see a comment on the internet along the lines of, why are so many people getting diagnosed with autism late in life? What is the point? The point is, it can help to explain just everything about who you are and all of the difficulties that you may have had throughout your whole life. And I can attribute autism essentially to everything in my life, everything I've worried about, and all of the times that I've beaten myself up and wondered, why am I so different? Why can't I explain this? Why can't I do this? It was because I'm autistic. It is because I'm autistic. And also, in terms of mental health, we know many autistic people really struggle in terms of mental health, such as depression and anxiety. And having this new information and being able to understand ourselves through the lens of being autistic can really help in terms of our own mental health. Why did you set up your channel, Autistic Jenny?
Well, when I set up my channel, it was like, so have I been on there like 4 years already? I think my channel's been going about 4 years. And I just wanted to understand myself better. So in the beginning, when I made these videos, some of the first videos, I had to research about what I wanted to talk about. So therefore, I was learning more about the topic and sharing what I was learning. And I was enjoying the connection I was feeling with other people who related and who said they could relate to my experience. It really made me feel like for the first time in my life, I had a connection. And that is what I love. That's what keeps me coming back making videos, connecting with other autistic people, sharing my experience, hearing their experience, learning. And I think it really shapes everything. And, you know, how can professionals not notice this community going on YouTube? How can they not use this as a valuable resource to get autistic people's experiences in the real world, to learn more about us? So we're not only learning from each other, but we are educating people outside of the community. Neurotypicals sometimes come along and will check out my video and tell me thank you as they're trying to understand somebody in their family. And I can't tell you how happy that makes me when I hear something like that. It's just all worth it. And also, it's my special interest and hobby, making videos, editing videos. It's what I enjoy doing. So it's just all in all a good thing for me.
I'd agree with basically all Jenny has to say here about having a channel. I think the sense of community above all is really quite something, and certainly for myself, I'm home based, so I don't see anybody really these days other than my partner or, doctors and stuff like that. So it really is a lifeline for me in that I'm able to communicate with other autistic people, and we all get each other. We're certainly not all the same. Every autistic person is different. If you met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, but very often we've just got a shared understanding that, yeah, just means so much to me. So, Jenny, how do you feel about aging as an autistic adult?
It's a little scary at times, honestly, because I work with seniors who some have dementia, some live in assisted living. And I think, what if that were me one day? How would I function here? How could I possibly function in this environment? Caregivers, would they really understand my needs? Would they know how to take care of me? Would they allow me to have a peanut butter and honey sandwich every day? Like, there's so many thoughts when it comes to aging, but that's kind of down the road, kind of way down the road. I'm in my 50s, so I'm still able to control my environment to a big extent, which helps. But I'm also navigating being a grandmother who is autistic, who has autistic grandchildren. And it has been learning how to navigate that. How can I let them know I'm okay when they see me with a flat effect, monotone voice? I don't seem excited about something. How can I verbally tell them that I'm okay, this is the way I am, and I'm really happy, I'm enjoying myself, even though my face doesn't look like it? I've had to tell my granddaughter that before. So, and it's also been about finding those common interests I have with them and just connecting with them in whatever way I can. With my grandsons being autistic, I can give a unique perspective, some insight there, and connect with them with their interests, knowing what it means to them.
Yeah, I think I've got similar worries about aging as an autistic person, and it's really about losing our control or losing our autonomy. Say, if we had to go into a care home or something like that, as Jenny said, she works with seniors within a care home setting, and I honestly don't think I'd cope very well at all. And I can only hope that I'm as able-bodied as possible for as long as possible, really. And I think for me, I'm not concerned about the prospect of aging because we all have to do it. We all have to go through that process. But yeah, it's losing control, and also, your body just doesn't work in the same way that it used to. And even now in my 50s, my body kind of hurts all the time, and I'm not as flexible as I once was. And as autistic people, we like things to stay the same, and of course our bodies are forever changing. And I think that's the number one thing that yeah, bothers me about aging. Can you tell me one thing that you love about being autistic?
Okay, it's actually, weirdly enough, something I love, something I don't like about myself at the same time. My ability to hyper focus and notice the details really helps me with my Etsy shop. When you spend hundreds of hours making almost 200 listings, you got to be loving what you're doing, and you got to be hyper focused, and you got to notice the details of how to succeed in what you want to do in your Etsy shop. So for me, the ability to hyper focus has really helped me be successful and have a Etsy shop that brings a constant income stream for me. It's not enough I could quit my job, but every bit helps, believe me, when you're working part-time. And then my ability to notice details has really helped me at work, because I often think of things that other people in my office didn't think of as that are a need or could be useful in the community at work. So my boss notices and appreciates that I can notice the details that were left out or skipped, because I'm going to catch those and notice they need to be done. So I love that ability, that I bring that unique insight there.
The ability to hyper-focus is something that I love as well, and it's been crucial actually for me as an artist. I spoke recently with Neil about something similar, that I love my tenacity, which is essentially my ability to hyper-focus on something that I really want to do or really want to learn, such as learning how to use clay. And I just love getting lost in autistic flow. Is work an area that you struggle with, and have you been able to put in place any useful accommodations?
I got my diagnosis when I had been at my job less than 1 year. And I went and sought a diagnosis because I felt so awkward in the work environment all of these years, and it just never went away. Wanted to figure out, why was I so different than other people in the work environment? Now that I have an answer, it helps. I have told some of my coworkers, but when you have a high turnover in a department, you get tired of telling your story over and over. So therefore, I don't always share my diagnosis unless someone says somebody in their family was just diagnosed with autism, or if it just comes up in some manner, I'm not ashamed to talk about it at all. And I think by word of mouth, everybody knows. You know how gossip happens. When you tell somebody, they're going to tell somebody else. So everybody pretty much knows. I, in my job, am able to avoid social awkwardness because I am able to go and do activities with seniors. I'm able to have freedom. I don't have to sit at a desk all day. I can be up and doing activities, which I enjoy. That's where I really flourish, doing those kind of things with residents. It gives me a sense of purpose. If I had any restrictions, I would say it's people that turn up their music in the office, and I've had to confront people before about how that affects me, and I do have earplugs that I can put in if I need to. The lighting does not really bother me at my job, so I'm good there. Accommodations, as far as being able to do my own thing, come and go as I need to, as long as I'm doing my job. Take breaks in my car, eat my lunch in my car means everything to me.
This is interesting, because I've worked in many a workplace that didn't have any kind of designated rest area. So it would mean that I would have my lunch at my desk very often. And of course, you still get constantly interrupted by your co-workers, or at least I used to, and it used to really, really bother me. And it's really interesting to hear that Jenny thrives in an environment where she feels like she's able to do her own thing, or at least to some small extent. And I can certainly get this.
And I also have to make my bosses aware sometimes that when we have a morning meeting, how the format goes makes a difference to me. And I've made suggestions before and they implement them no problem. In fact, they say, that's a good idea. We should do that. So it's just about speaking up. I don't have anything as far as paperwork filed in the office, as far as accommodations. If I needed them, I would have no problem, though, coming up with that. I am learning a little bit about that, but I just feel like I'm well taken care of right now and able to do my job. Going down to part-time was key for me because even working 5 days a week, the social anxiety and just the overwhelm, the overmasking had a toll on me for so many years. So now that I'm able to work 3 times a week, it's perfect for me because I have those days in between where I can just be at home and do and relax and be myself. So that has helped me too as well.
My final question is, would you rather go to a theatre or a museum?
Museum, 100%. I love educational experiences. I love museums. I love to learn. I just love museums. I always have. Even as a kid, I got excited about going to museums. So that is a fun outing, and I think it's a perfect thing to do with friends when you struggle with social anxiety. going to something like a museum is a great thing because you can have something to talk about with the other person. So I love to go to museums. Yes, I do. I have a big passion for learning and for visiting museums. I love historical things.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and a big thank you to Jenny for taking part in today's Autistic Ramblings. So that's it for today. So thank you for watching. Give it a like if you got this far. Comments would always be appreciated, and if you don't know what to say, leave an orange heart down below for friendship, and I'm going to leave the final word to Jenny.
Lizzie, what an honor and what a pleasure to be on your channel. And I'm a fan as well. And thank you so much for having me. I hope your viewers will get something out of my answers and my interviews, and I hope that they connected with me on some level. And thanks again for having me, Lizzie.